May I now ask the panelists on our first panel to join me on stage, Dr. Ahmad Hasna, President of Hamad bin Khalifa University in Qatar, Dr. Mansour Al-Awar, Chancellor of Hamdan bin Mohammed Smart University in the UAE, as well as Mr. Wong Xiu Hong, the advisor for the Ministry of Education. This panel is moderated by our Executive Director, Michelle Theo, who's joining us as she's saying goodbye to Madame Halima Yacob. So if you please bear with me for a few minutes, for a few seconds probably. So the moderator for this first panel will be Michelle Theo, our Executive Director at the Middle East Institute.
Good morning. Let me catch my breath. I apologize, my events team makes me work very, very hard. But let me welcome you to this morning's panel. And also say that the opening actually by Madam Halima really, I think, allows us to dovetail nicely into the next phase, which is the first panel this morning, looking at education for national progress, aligning vision, curriculum, and innovation. So let me say a few things about this panel. In this first panel, we consider how 3 countries, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and Singapore, have approached their transformation drives, and how education has been a key factor in the development of a skilled workforce able to adapt to a global economy that is constantly being transformed and pivoted by rapid changes in technology. What is the vision driving the educational policies of these 3 countries? How has the curriculum transformed? And how does it continue to evolve? What are the innovations deployed to ensure that each country achieves its goal of a future-proof, knowledge-based economy? Let's open with the United Arab Emirates. The UAE has been one of the fastest to move ahead in pivoting its economy away from a traditional reliance on oil and gas towards an economy focused on the digital. In our opening presentation for this morning's panel, our speaker will consider education, service versus utility. In particular, we will focus on the UAE's vision in digital education. Our first panelist, Dr. Mansour Al-Awa, is Chancellor of the Hamdan bin Mohammed Smart University and a member of the Executive Council of the Association of Arab Universities. A leader in innovation, Dr. Al-Anwar launched the Hamdan bin Mohammed Smart University, the region's first university with a smart learning approach, as well as Innovation Arabia, an annual scientific conference focused on innovation in the Arab world. Dr. Mansour has served as the chair of several prestigious entities, including chairman of the governing board of the UNESCO Institute for Information Technologies in Education, and he has been chair of a number of juries for excellence awards. Dr. Mansour, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Your Excellencies, dear distinguished guests, thank you very much, and I'm really grateful here this morning to be a part of this panel with my colleagues, the scholars here, and who are participating in other panels as well. We came here just to be able to learn from each other and to be able to share some of the ideas together. Before I start, Madam Chair, I'm going to start with an incident when I see the wonderful audience here. It reminds me, 2 decades ago, I was invited to conduct a workshop back in the United Arab Emirates. And it was not in Dubai, because I'm coming from Dubai, but it was outside Dubai. So my workshop was exactly on 2 p.m., which we call usually the graveyard slot. And I arrived at 1:45. I plugged in my computer and I was ready to go. And the workshop was be conducted only on 30 people, 30. And exactly like this. I mean, the entrance was from the side and the chairs were here, but of course it's a smaller hall. 1:50, nobody showed up. 1:55, nobody showed up. 2:01, a guy came in with a briefcase, and he sat down at the last row, and I begged him to come forward. So when he just came forward, I started to talk because this workshop had been paid for, so I had to do it. So the poor guy in the hall did not discover that he is alone until I finished my talk, and he gave me a big round of applause, but he was just moving around and nobody's there. So I said, any questions? He said, no questions whatsoever. And I said, okay. So I packed everything and I just intended to go away. He stopped me, he said, Dr. Mansour, if you don't mind, can you wait for an hour? I thought that he might need a ride to Dubai. I said, yes, sir, but may I know why, sir, I have to wait for an hour? He said, sir, because I'm the next speaker after you. So I'm just letting the audience know that we have wonderful speakers and wonderful audience. So to start with, the topic that Madam Chair has alluded to, I'm honored here to come to share some of our experiences, share my experience as well, into something that reflects the vision of United Arab Emirates and its leaders as well towards transformation. I was quite impressed by the title of the conference, the role of education in transformation. I would say the role, that means there are other roles. From my perspective, education in the core of any transformation needed. And I think that's exactly what it is. And I think I've been studying in the West, both United States and UK. And there was a common wording says, okay, if you think that education is expensive, try ignorance. And I think that motto, it's not going to help in any transformation needed in any other countries. I think ignorance is expensive. Education should not be so. That's what I believe in. And I think I'm going to share with you today briefly what the vision we're talking about on digitizing education. Hamdan bin Muhammad Smart University being established more than 2 decades ago in 2002. It was a very bold move. It was kind of a courageous decision being made by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the Vice President of the United Arab Emirates, the Prime Minister, and the ruler of Dubai at that time. And let me focus first of all how this digital education is coming. And I thank Madam Halima also. She touched a little bit on those type of items. I'm just going to show you an overall view. Why I'm saying the education is the core, because our president, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the President of the United Arab Emirates, one of his speeches is priceless. I'm going to share with you this video. It just show you what I'm going to talk about afterwards.
رهاننا الحقيقي في هذه الفترة من الزمن، في هذه الفترة اللي نحن عندنا خير، هو أن نحن نستثمر كل إمكانياتنا في هذا التعليم.
That's precise. Whatever wealth United Arab Emirates has, it's for education. That's the real engine behind any transformation is going to come. And I think the other, boundary for this, I think that government that, invests in education, what sort of education, what sort of government they're looking for. Just a decade ago, more than a decade ago, this was a post on the X by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, clearly says that the government of the future is a government that it is always responsive, it works 24 hours by a day, 365 days a year, it is hospitable as hotels, fast in delivering and strong in its processes. And I think this reflects the governing on any move that been done in the government. Now, I come again, narrow it down to education. What His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid says, it's a vision in education. I'm convinced, he said, and this is by the way not a clipping media. This is in his book, been written in 2005. I am convinced that teaching our children in the same way we did yesterday, it is itself perpetuating a new kind of illiteracy that no longer has a place in any society that wishes to join the global race. And that is exactly was the vision behind establishment of Hamdan bin Muhammad Smart University back in 2002. And from that part of the whole thing comes in today's fast evolving landscape marked by significant shifts in employment practices, hiring based on skills, not degrees, technological achievements, and evolving learner preferences, expectations. There is an increasing number of learners, actually, who do not want to commit 4 years of their lives to earn a degree. Higher education institutions face a critical need to adapt. Some of those points being touched by Madam Halima as well. To remain competitive and relevant, universities must focus on 3 objectives: attracting, engaging, and retaining learners. This involves not only updating their curricula to include cutting-edge technologies and skills relevant to the modern workforce, but change the overall learning experience to meet the changing demands and preferences for diverse student body. And I think that is something that we face. Now, but coming back to the topic, is it service or is it utility? We can adapt to attract, engage, retain learners by turning education into a utility. Now, how that will be possible? By unbundling education. We can turn education into utility by breaking it down to smaller components. And learners can then customize what Madam Halima alluded to, customize their educational paths based on their specific needs, interests, and career goals. This is a bold move. And we as educators have never experienced such kind of a disruption which is coming up today into the arena. Now, how I'm going to do that? I'm sharing with you an experience that Hamdan bin Muhammad Smart University been through by cooperating with the National Commissioner of Academic Accreditation. That when we're going to unbundle a course, unbundle education, the learning paths should be very clear. And that is exactly what you see here in the screen. There are certain badges. The one single course will be unbundled into badges. You can have a digital badge, then few badges will learn for you a certificate. Few certificates will get you a micro-credential. Few micro-credentials, it will allow you to go for academic credential. And that dotted red line that you see, academic credentials, is the only gate that you need to have a prerequisite admission criteria, because you are opting now to go for an academic credential. But the rest are open. The rest, which actually reflects the lifelong learning, which Madam Halima talked about, with no restrictions. We cannot deprive segmentation of societies that they cannot have an access to knowledge, access to education. Universities for centuries been playing that role to deprive people from good education. And that is exactly what I said in the beginning. If you think education is expensive, that was the university's motto, try ignorance. I would say no. Ignorance is expensive, ladies and gentlemen, but education should not be so. This is an open gateway when we talk about society. It would be from the age of 7 to 99. We call it in Arabic, min al-mahdi lil-lahd. So that is exactly what the universities today must be looking at and must be thinking about very seriously. And that particular mindset, we have put it up in 2002. And this is exactly what it looks like when a university will be able to impact on society, will we engage society overall. And that's exactly what I'm trying to say. This particular pyramid is a modus operandi of having the lifelong learning intact. And look at the pyramid exactly. The base of the pyramid is casual learners. That's what you call it the 4 C's model at our university. Casual learners means it's just only being a digital badge that I alluded to before. And once you go up and certification and micro-credentials and go up again, academic credentials and then executive education. Now, the numbers decreases as you go up onto the pyramid. If you just consider today, universities, back in our geography, what they are doing is only concentrating on the 3rd layer of the pyramid, which is the research-driven programs, bachelor, master's, PhD. And the rest are not there. So that's exactly what in putting it into the education. Now, what would be the characteristic of such an unbundling, what I'm talking about? The first one is universal access to education. By treating education like a basic utility similar to water and electricity, it emphasizes the idea that everyone should have an access to learning opportunities. This can lead to more inclusive policies to aim to bridge the gap between different socioeconomic groups. And the second thing is focus on essential skills. And with a utility model, the curriculum could focus on imparting essential skills that are universally needed, such as literacy, numeracy, and digital literacy, preparing all students with a solid foundation for more advanced educational opportunities or employment. And of course, it's a personalized learning. It's just to me. And I think I don't want to go what Madam Halima has already alluded to. It's just only a personal, it's not anymore one size fits all. It's a matter of individual, personal learning experience. And the sustainability and efficiency, of course, similar to how utilities manage resources, an education system seen as a utility might focus on the efficient use of resources. And last but not the least is equity and fairness. And I think by ensuring that education is accessible, disparities in educational outcomes due to economic, geographical, or social factors can significantly be reduced, promoting more equitable society. And the last slide of mine is my quote, actually. I've been for a long time, since 2002, been saying the following. Shopping is essential. Shopping malls as a brick and mortar, not anymore. Banking is essential. Banks as brick and mortar, not anymore. Consequently, this is slide, schooling is essential, schools are not, learning is essential, universities are not. That's, by this I say thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mansour. I think that's going to elicit some lively discussion later on during the Q&A. Let me go on now to Qatar. Qatar is known for its education city, a unique hub for knowledge and research forged out of partnerships with well-known educational and research institutes from around the globe. More critically, the question to ask is, how has Qatar's curriculum in educational institutions evolved? How are resources allocated? And are there specific pathways set out that define success within the educational system? In your assessment, Dr. Ahmad, what is needed in order to train highly skilled citizens? Are there specific or multiple approaches? Our second speaker today, Dr. Ahmad M. Hasna, is president of the Hamad bin Khalifa University and as a member of the Qatar Foundation for Education, Science and Community Development in Doha, is no stranger to the education city, having played a key role in its development, and as Director of Academic Affairs and then Associate Vice President for Higher Education in the subsequent discussions with many of the Qatar Foundation's partner universities. Dr. Hasna, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's really a good morning, everybody. It's a great honor and pleasure to get the chance to share some thoughts with you. I cannot promise I will have an interesting story like my colleague, Dr. Mansour, to start with. So I hope you would really, I will get immediately into the few ideas that I would like to share with everybody. I decided not to put the slides on the screen for really a very important reason, in my opinion, which is really that we do not really know the answers to what we are trying to do today as we are trying to educate for the future. And I don't think anybody can sit and really give us an answer about how do we really do that 100%. You know, there is a lot of good ideas going around, but we need to always be open to be adaptable and flexible. So I will honestly try to share with you a few ideas that I think that was really the basis for what Qatar and Qatar Foundation have worked on, and then we can have maybe a lively debate afterward to discuss and to work on. And let me start again, similar to Madame Halima and my colleague Dr. Mansour and everybody. Qatar 30, 40 years ago found that the right investment, it's a human capital. You need to unlock your human capital if you want to really live into the future. Natural resources eventually will finish, the prices will change and all of that. So it's very important to prepare for the future by preparing your people. Having said that, I think a very important element was, how do you do that? And I think in Qatar Foundation in particular, under the leadership of Her Highness Sheikh Moza, the chair of the board, the idea of looking at education as a continuum is a very important element. You cannot look at education as set of sectors or as a set of elements. You need to look at the education as a continuum and as a continuous activity. Continuum means you cannot just take a look at the primary education alone and then look at the higher education. You need to really look at the system as a whole, because each one of them is really playing a key role in achieving a certain milestone in whatever transformation is trying to do. And primary education is key. A higher education institute cannot fix a 12 years or 10 years or whatever that end up being in 4 years or 10 years. So you need to put an effort in your primary education, in your schooling, to make those students are ready for the future. And this is why Qatar Foundation started by schooling before we got into Education City in higher ed, and established schools that it is really to provide the future possibility of those students. Continuous is similar to how do you really shift the mind of the people so they are really continue to learn. So we keep speaking about lifelong learning, and we can provide all the opportunity possible, whether through the digital platforms or informal, formal education. But unless there is a shift in the mind of the people that education and upskilling and continuing learning is part of the journey, you will always have those available, but you will not have participation at the level the country wants. So I think, again, I'm gonna every time give you what I believe is the title of that piece of the idea as continuum and continuous as a very important two elements. Let me move from that and speak, how do you deal with the future? Now, with the AI, with digitization, with everything, what role, what we should be looking at? What could be the principles of the education system? And I'm gonna share with you maybe 4 principles today. Again, for discussion, nobody would say that those are exclusively only those principles. And the first one is identity. I know that we keep speaking about globalization and digitization and all of that, but we need to all remember that language, social aspect, culture is crucial for country development. If you cut that link, our kids will leave their or lose their connection to their heritage, to their history, to their role in life. They would really get confused about what their purpose of life is. So I think the first principle is, regardless of what we do, we need to emphasize that identity elements. How do we connect our students through all their education system into their identity, to their language, to their heritage, to their aspect of life, so they can really provide a different experience, a different way of looking at things. We are human, we are created to be different. It's not one model. So that differentiation would come from your value, from your principles, from your heritage, because you have a different setting. So the first one is identity. Second is creativity. We will all know with technology, similar to when the calculator was established now, it can calculate much faster than the human. So what should we teach our students? What should we teach our kids? How do we make them really ready for the future? Do we really want them to become just robots and machine? They know how to use AI applications? I think this would be a risk, because then we will lose our creativity. So I think creativity is a very crucial element. And creativity in all aspects, not only in tech STEM, but creativity in everything they do in life. You need to infuse their life within schools, within higher education system, within work, to work around creativity. How do you do things differently? What you could do next? How do you utilize those set of tools now available to you to do something more with them instead of just utilizing them? The third elements, which I think touch base quite a bit on what Dr. Mansour have been spoken about, is flexibility and adaptability. You need to have a system which can adapt in a fast way. One of the problems of education system across the globe is we are a very slow compared to the business area. It takes education people and education system so long to do a turn. It just takes forever. It's like you're trying to turn, an aircraft carrier compared to the business people acts like, a small boat. They can turn left, right, back, and forward in a very quick way. And I think unless we start infuse that adaptability and flexibility in the system, we will always be very late into the game. Because adaptability is what's going on, you need to be in the front end, and flexibility, which is exactly, I think, what Dr. Mansour alluded to, which is provide different possibility for people, informally, formally, decouple, competency-based, why everybody needs to use 4 years of their life to finish a bachelor degree. I might really need 5, and maybe my colleague need 2 based on their competency and their pathway. So I think until now, universities are not adapted to that. We keep speaking about competency, but honestly, we keep treating everybody as if they have the same set. They get in from the same point and they finish at the same end. And this is, I think, something that we need to really think about. The last principle is the soft skills. Communication, social intelligence, manners. Those are important. Those are as important as your ability to calculate. Because even if you have the greatest story, if you do not really know how to tell it, nobody will listen. So we need also to pay an attention. It doesn't have to be formally, but we need to create activities and stuff around that so people can learn this. Again, so those are some ideas related. How do we deal with the future? Because I don't think we know today what those set of skills will look like. And we need to educate, similar to what the education system used to be since the inception, is really having a person who is really can learn. I'm always had that issue when I was a faculty member or a chair of a department, or even when I reached to be a president of a university. I have that challenge with the market space. Companies want to create MOOCs, that they work about what they need today. Universities should really graduate students that are really able to adapt and work in any environment. And this is really key. So they need to cater to the market, but not to make the market is in the driving force. So let me shift maybe into another, as I am trying to get you in a journey. I don't know if it's cohesive, but at least we're touching on a lot of good elements. So going back into the vision of Qatar and Qatar Foundation when it comes to the curriculum or the education. Research, but research in the wider understanding, not only the academic research. Research in the sense of your ability to really seek knowledge and be able to really look into different resources was key in the establishment of the education system. How do you really bring an education system that will encourage students to really look beyond the resources that they have in the classroom, whether in the school or whether they are in the higher ed? So creating an education infrastructure, creating an enabler for research was key elements. On multi-level, from the academic research into the availability of some of those support within the schooling. And this is where Qatar I think were maybe, if not the first, among the first in the Middle East and the Gulf to establish a research fund that wasn't really only for academicians. A lot of those programs were to high school, to undergraduate students, to learn how do you really explore knowledge. So now we spoke about curriculum or education. The second elements to that triangle is research, which is important. And you cannot just speak about academic research, as I said. So that's why the Qatar National Research Fund high school students, undergrad, scientists, and academicians. But they have different catering to different people. The third elements, which to complete that cycle, so you need to have a quality, adaptable, flexible education infused with research and your ability to create knowledge and to seek knowledge, which really hopefully will shift your mind into lifelong learning. And then finally, how do you innovate? How do you take your idea into action? You need also to have enabler for those young people to be able to take their ideas into action. And this is where the Science and Technology Park, even though it's called Science and Technology Park, it caters for social innovation and other stuff. So you need to complete that by providing that journey from being educated right, know how to be creative, and how do you take your creativity into action. So this gives you the cycle that you have within Education City in the Qatar Foundation. I will go back quickly, if that's okay, into the pathways. Just to touch base about some of the opportunities, so like practical examples. So you are really, we're not speaking only theory, as they say, but we're giving you a practical example. On the pathways, for example, within Education City, the multiversity principle have been created, which allow the students to take their pathways across different institutions. And this is not only because of strength of the different institutions. I think it's more important toward the availability, so you're widening your opportunities, but the second very important element, you're exposed to a different educational experience, because every institution has its ethos and way of conducting business, and being in multi-institution will allow you to really build that capability. The second pathway is allowing high school students to cross into university while they are still within the high school. So they are not really, we're continuum, and the continuous, we do not like to treat them as a set of sectorial elements. Now, when you speak about all of this, a very important elements come into the equation, which is policies. And those are really the role of the country, Ministry of Education, and we will listen today, hopefully, from Singapore about a lot of innovative policy. But without policy framework, all of those will not work out. Because then your students and your innovation will be suffering from recognition and accreditation and validation and all of that. So you need to create your policy framework to be with the same mindset of being adaptable, flexible, quick in responding. And this is where I think in Qatar, the Qatar Foundation and the Ministry of Education work together in trying to advance this. I will conclude with one final example, because I think Madam President spoke a lot about women education, and it is a very important to the Qatar Foundation. More than 50% of the STEM students in Education City are women, which is really remarkable for us. What's more important is that the country and the Qatar Foundation, but on the level of the country, we introduce a lot of enabler for those women, not only to continue their education, but to be able to work without really feeling the pressure. So Flexi Hour was introduced on the level of the country, so you could really work for a certain number of hours, and you're still considered as a full employee. You do not really need to work exactly all. So you adapt depending on your situation. If you are a mother that just had a baby and you need to cater for that, you can work less number of hours. So that flexi hour is one of the policies that I am speaking about as an example. And I think it's very important. I have learned about another policy, not in Qatar, but we're trying to introduce that in Malaysia, since we are in Asia, where they are really also constituting a job for a non-working mother. And they consider her educating her kids and preparing her kids as a job for the society that she gets paid for, which I think take us into the role of the family and how the family can contribute into the education into the future, because it will never be only within the walls or of anything, whether it's called school or your room if you are personalized. I will conclude with one last example of a practical elements from the university. So we spoke about when it comes to the education in the curriculum. We have designed the curriculum to provide, at least at the beginning, 3 pathways to the students. One, if you are pursuing a career, like you are interested in joining the market, and in this case, we make sure that that curriculum cater for your exposed to the market, to internship, to business aspect. So you are really not only an engineer, you are a prepared engineer. If your future career is to establish your own company, we infuse your curriculum by more incubation, more entrepreneurship, boot camps, and all of that. So you are really also part of your learning environment. If you are really interested in becoming in a leadership, whether in academia or research or science, we engage you more in real life research of global challenges and grand challenges, so you can be exposed to those as a part of your, so when you are applying, you can always shift between those, but you have a different pathways toward what you could be aiming to. And those are not mutually exclusive, which means you could do entrepreneurship and career-wise, because you would like to open both. I think I took more than I should. Okay. So thank you very much. I hope that I gave you some interesting idea for the debate. As I said, those are just, some of them have been implemented, but some are still for us to debate and consider. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hasna. Before we introduce the Singapore story, let me welcome our last panelist, Mr. Wong Siu Hong, advisor at the Ministry of Education in Singapore and previously Director General of Education. As we introduce you this morning, Mr. Wong, you do have a link to MEI, as 2 of my colleagues have known you in your previous capacities, and I think they met you this morning. Mr. Wong currently chairs the National Institute of Education International, Singapore Examinations and Assessment Board, and the Thales Governing Board at the OECD, among other roles. We've talked of a knowledge-based economy in Singapore for many years. What has been the role of education in Singapore's national strategy and journey towards such an economy? Education in Singapore has not remained static in the decades since independence. And even as we have offered multiple education pathways for our workforce, our focus has continually evolved. Today we speak of lifelong learning as we seek to narrow the education gap. So my questions here are there guiding principles that have informed our education transformations? Are there lessons we have learned and lessons that others could learn from us? Mr. Wong, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Michelle, and good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a teacher by training, by profession, and by passion. So since Dr. Mansour shared the story and responded so well, I shall follow his footsteps by sharing a story to induct you into what I want to share with you this morning. This is a story revolving around an owl and a caterpillar. Both of them were sitting on top of a tree, enjoying the beautiful sun and the breeze and the scenery in front of them. Along came a butterfly, fluttering into the air. And the caterpillar saw the butterfly and got so excited. Oh, such a beautiful butterfly. Mr. Owl, the butterfly is so beautiful, I want to become a butterfly. How do I do that? Mr. Owl said, just grow 2 wings. And the caterpillar thought about it. Yes, I will grow 2 wings and become a beautiful butterfly. Then he thought, a second thought, but how do I grow 2 wings? Mr. Owl, how do I grow 2 wings? And Mr. Owl replied, I'm only in charge of policy, not implementation, so don't ask me. Yes, please laugh, thank you. What is the moral of the story? I will come to that later on. But here, today, I'm here to share with you the Singapore story in education. Actually, Madam Halima has covered that quite substantially in her speech, much more eloquently. So I will second a lot of her points and maybe take the opportunity to elaborate on some of them. On some of the key principles that we've applied in Singapore education, again, my 2 very esteemed panelists had touched upon some of the key ideas that have undergirded the development of our Singapore education system as well. And I will take the opportunity to reinforce some of these points and to share how Singapore did it our way. The story must begin, of course, in 1959. That's a landmark year when Singapore achieved self-government. Prior to that, under the British, we had a very diversified education system. The British started a number of English schools. There were the missionaries who came and set up mission schools for boys and for girls. And of course, in Singapore, our Chinese Clans Association were very actively promoting their community and setting up Chinese schools. And of course, the same for the Malay schools, Malay community for the Malay schools, and the Tamil schools set up by the Tamil communities. So in 1959, and prior to that, we have a diversity of school types with different language use, with different languages used, different media instructions applied. So when the first Singapore government came into effect, just as been reinforced many times in this conversation, the government was very clear that for national development, education was important. And right from the onset, they paid attention to education, investing heavily. They started centralizing the curriculum. They started building more schools. They recruited teachers en masse. And story has been told, one of my friends who is now in his 80s, basically when he just graduated from school as a 16-year-old, ministry officials were at the entrance of the school hall just after they finished the last exam. Come, join us in teaching service. And they recruited many, many students into teaching service. And they built many schools, they enrolled many, many students as much as they can. So that was the proliferation of really mass education, trying to get as many of our students into the school. And we began to give them technical education, emphasis on mathematics and science to feed our beginning of our industrialization program. By the time we came to the 1970s, education gained an even greater prominence in the economic development of Singapore, and the need for greater understanding of math and science was really, really urgent. So much so that they put one of our founding fathers, Deputy Prime Minister Goh Keng Swee, in charge of education. That's the kind of investment they're talking about. And he, in 1979, created the landmark report that defined quite a number of things in education. Centralization, making sure that education was customized. Customization was a very, very important key principle. But at that time, we did not have full resources, so the customization was simple. 3 streams, one for the able students, one for the middle band of students, and one for the weak learners. And with that, immediately the education improved because students were able to understand what they were taught in school. Attrition rate which defined the previous system of mass education, began to decline. And every student was staying in school, was coming into school and staying in school much, much longer. And that was really important because the aim must be to try and get every student finish at least 10 years of general education. And through the work of Dr. Goh, much of that was achieved. And when we arrived in the 1990s, knowledge-based economy has become the defining needs of the Singapore system. Globalization was burgeoning. Technology was advancing very quickly. We were beginning to see the beginning of computing powers. And there was an urgent need to try and help the nation become a truly highly knowledge-based economy working on high value addedness. Do we have a population that's able to do that? And that's when, in 1997, another landmark year for us, the Prime Minister then, Mr. Goh Chok Tong, announced the Thinking Schools Learning Nation initiative that in many ways define all the work that we've been doing, setting upon us a set of reforms affecting many, many aspects of the education system, from preschool to general education, in curriculum, in pedagogy, in assessment, in teacher training, in many, many aspects, and of course, in higher education as well. The point to be made about the Thinking School Learning Nation in retrospection is that education reforms does not happen once and it's job done. Education reform has long gestation period. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know how to approach the future, as Dr. Ahmad has put it. But you have to work in education in good faith, believing that what you do today will have an impact down the road, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And that reform cannot happen episodically. It must be layers of reform building upon each other, layer upon layer, building on the good foundation that previous reform has done. Education reform must be by evolution, not revolution. And that's the attitude that we took. And as Madam Halimah put it, it's the long-sighted view that we must take in education that's very, very important. The stability helps, the long vision helps. And it is that kind of reform that we undertook that defined us for the last 65 years for what we have in education today. So, what were some of the educational work that we did? Customization, as I said, was really, really very, very important. From 3 streams, we began to unravel the 3 streams to give final refinement to the streams. Until today, we are no longer talking about 3 streams. We're talking about 3 possible levels of subjects that students can pursue. So it is not mass curricular streaming. It is now streaming at the subject level so that students can pursue their passion and their ability and their strength. We had, in the last 25 years, a massive set of work that was done to create multiple pathways. In the past, the students went up 3 streams vertically. Now, if you look at our education system, there are multiple pathways. You can be going left, right, center, and then you end up, from the slower stream to junior college to university. You have got, you can have opportunity to go to the polytechnic, which offers top-class education, to the Institute of Technical Education, which give you high-level skills that will make you workforce ready. So the possibilities are tremendous. We started the sports school, we started the art school, we started school for the math and science, we started school for slow learners. The whole works that enable everybody to achieve a customized curriculum that meet their own needs. Maximizing the potential of every citizen in Singapore was tremendously important, both for economic reason as well as for purposes of social cohesion and social responsibility and their participation in society. Education must be very, very future-oriented as well. This is the long-term view. This is Singapore's obsession with future orientation, with what the future will bring. As we said, we don't know what the future will bring. So our approach is to focus on the strong fundamentals and future learning. Strong fundamentals of literacy, numeracy, character development, social-emotional competencies. And only upon achieving those things which we had done, we spent a lot of time now focusing on the 21st century competencies. Competencies of information skills, collaborative skills, communication skills, multiliteracy, civic literacy, and has been spoken about a couple of times, the ability to be critical thinkers and to be creative problem solvers as well. So these are the kind of new competencies which we believe will make our people adaptable, resilient, and able to innovate, to meet whatever the future will require of them. So that customization, that future orientation are all very important elements. And with that, the curriculum changed. Our curricular reforms happened again, not by a single chop and change, but through layering of the kind of things that we put into the curriculum. Much more forward-looking. Instead of just talking about content, we begin to start cutting content, to spend a bit more time for teachers to work on some of the softer skills, to thinking skills, through application skills. As Madam Halima said it quite eloquently, it is not just the knowledge that the students must acquire, but it is the ability to apply the knowledge that will matter most in a knowledge-based economy. And so the teachers began to help our students acquire thinking skills that will enable them to apply the knowledge they've acquired into many, many different as well as novel problem-solving situations. With curricular change, unit assessment changes as well. So our national examination is no longer about recall. What is gravity? You know, what are the few ancient river civilization? We ask much more thinking questions. How do you apply the theory of gravity to a particular problem? How do you solve this particular math problem using Pythagoras theorem? How does Pythagoras theorem work in real life? What is the meaning of river civilization as applied to the context of the development of the world? So those are the kind of questions, very, very open-ended, much more applicable, that we are asking the students to mount over every single day when they are in school. So there is a pedagogical change, there is an assessment change that was needed. A lot of the examination questions we set now are all about applications, not just mere recall. And I think with that, with the advent of education technology as well, we try to implant a lot of the education technology and the digital skills development in our students as well. I think again, Madam Halima spoke about it, our program to give every student a device so that they can use the device for learning and for their development of their digital literacy. And lastly, of course, in the curriculum, we are trying to get the students to understand that the need to learn how to learn is the most important, so that they imbue in themselves the disposition and the skills to learn for life. And that notion that learning does not stop when you leave school. Learning continues, and you do not just front load all your understanding and all your knowledge acquisition and all your acquisition of skill sets in general education in the 12 years in our school system, but you must bring that knowledge into the workforce and to continue to learn and relearn, because the world will continue to change. So with that, that brings me to my last point, and that brings me to the point about what has this got to do with our and the Caterpillar. It is about the policy implementation nexus. We have a very strong HQ. We can develop many sound policies and curricular syllabuses, scheme of work, textbooks, things that are very, very useful for teaching and learning. But at the end of the day, it is the implementation of all these policies and all the curricular programs that will matter on the ground. So schools are important. You need to develop, and we spend a great deal of time thinking about how to develop good thinking schools that can innovate, that can meet the needs of the students under their charge. To do that, we develop quality assurance systems, quality assurance framework. We do not inspect our schools anymore. We tell them, you're going to do the best by your students. We come in and we take a look and tell you whether you're on the right track or not. Secondly, you need strong principalship. In 1997, that was the recognition that leadership in school is probably one of the most important things that must happen in the system. And for that, we recognize the principals. And one of the first things that was done during that period of time was to tell the whole world that the principal is the most important person in the system. We'll make them super skilled civil servants. Not to just follow rules, but to be able to run their schools innovatively and respond to the needs of the students as closely as is possible. And thirdly, the most important group of people in education, as has been said a couple of times by both Madam Halima as well as our panelists, teachers. Because teachers are the people who directly work with the students to deliver all the programs. They are the most important touch point, whether it is about literacy, numeracy, character development, about 21st century competencies, the kind of pedagogical skills they must bring to bear in the classroom, outside the classroom, in the playing field, in the learning journey, to wherever they bring their students to, so the students can learn not just about the content, but about the real world that they must learn to thrive in. And for this, Singapore did a lot of work on our teacher development, on teacher policies. Number one, again, by the same token, we decided that we must pay our teachers well. We'll pay them competitive rates. We'll pay them competitive salary to some of the best in the market. Number two, we must make sure that they are well recognized by society. And to keep that high, we have publicity telling the whole wide world, particularly our Singapore public and parents, that teachers are important, teachers doing important work, and that we must support them. Thirdly, we must make sure that we recruit the best to come in. And so the recruitment campaign, and it's been extremely successful. We managed to get many, many able, high-quality people to join teaching. But lastly, it is about professional development. Even when you get good quality people in, to keep pace with all the educational development, to continually to develop them. And to develop them through teacher-led professional development, not just through workshops, but to tell teachers that they own their own development. You can lead the pedagogical innovations and pedagogical development that the system will need. And finally, in conclusion, and the most important point of all, we must imbue in our teachers. And we did a huge campaign there again to try and tell them that they're the most important people in society, in our country's development, because they have able to impact the whole next generation of Singaporeans to come. And for Singapore to succeed, they must succeed in their work as teachers, molding the future of the nation. And they must believe in that mission. They must believe in that very important task ahead of them. So on that note, I hope that the Singapore story has been interesting. It's been interesting for us. It's still continual work that's happening at the ministry, at each of our schools, in each of our classrooms. And I share that modestly with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much to all three of our panelists. I thought there was a really lively sort of session. I enjoyed listening to everyone's stories. Some key takeaways. Education is a continuum, and it must be dynamic, adaptable, customizable. Implementation is key, which means that you have to make sure that the people who are doing the implementation, as we have learned in Singapore, they must be able to do the implementation, and I think there must be a passion about it as well. Strong fundamentals, I think all of us talked about this. Strong fundamentals must form the basis if you want creativity and the ability to apply what you have learned to thrive. One thing that I thought very interesting from Dr. Mansur was looking at your education as a utility. You articulated that, but I think listening to all the panelists, all our countries, I think maybe as small countries with small populations, small workforces, we've all taken, I think, a very similar approach towards the whole issue of education. So thank you very much to all three. Let me now open the floor to Q&A. There are 2 microphones. Let me just point them out to the audience. There's one here, and there is one on this side. If you want to ask a question, please come up to the microphone, identify yourself, and let us know who you want to address the question to. The first question comes from our board member, Anthony Teo. Anthony, you don't have to identify yourself. I've identified you already.
Yes, marvelous presentation. I have a question that relates to all of you. But this is the first time I come to a conference in which I'm very prepared because I spent 12 years studying universities. How do universities and cities morph over time? Because eventually 80% of our population are in cities. But I like your comment on continuum. And in Qatar, you have Sherban, which is primary, secondary, and pre-U. And all your Altanis are there, and they produce, through Sherban, Lacare, Turin, the computer guy, and the last secretary of Colonial Secretary, Lennox Boyd. Okay. But then if I could come to Mansour, I like your, if education is expensive, try ignorance. Many have claimed to be fathers of that speech. Derek Bock from Harvard, Albert Camus. But what I eventually try to figure out with the 20 universities that we've done over the last 12 years is, what do they worry about as a university? And they say 2 things. That it should be collegiate so that there is no ownership that you are more senior, you are better. It must be open-ended, collegiate. So Cambridge is famous for that collegiality. Okay. Then the question is, Cambridge, what are you worried about? And what they say is, what we are worried about is if the government tells us to take and water down our student intake quality. So now my question goes to Mr. Wong. So in his history, 12 years ago, NUS was ranked somewhere around 40 plus or minus. NTU was ranked 60 plus or minus. But today, NUS is number 8 in the world. But the cohort is from top 1% to up to 40%. But our friends in MIT is 1 to 5%. Cambridge is same. Harvard is the same. The question is, how does a university move from number 60, number 40 to number 8? And before NUS became number 8, NTU and NUS jointly claimed 11th position in the world. So there must be some magic that he's kept without telling us after about the caterpillar. So, because that is transformational. Thank you.
I don't know what the magic is. I don't know if that's indeed the magic at all. But in our institutions, marked across the entire education landscape, is about culture of excellence, culture of innovation, which has actually been imbued in us over the last 40, 50 years of our nation's independence. The need to continue to strive to become better than what we were the day before. And if we have got a issue, we will try and solve it to the best of our ability through creative problem solving, through innovative solution. And I think that had been the hallmark of our system, both at the general education as well as the higher education. Our university, if you look at them on a daily basis, everybody in the university have been striving and striving for excellence, whether it's in publication, in research, whether it's in teaching. We may not get the best of students in any of our universities, but none of them would say, therefore, I don't work harder. They would do their best because they know that the work that they impact, the work that they do impact the students in terms of getting them ready, not just for the workforce, but also for society. And that mission-mindedness, again, I think is so characteristic of the whole of Singapore, particularly the Singapore educators and Singapore education system. And it's that mindset also that enabled me to tell you the story about Caterpillar and because in every of our people working in education, all the way from the janitor in the school, all the way to the principal, to some of us working in headquarters in the universities, our strong understanding of we need to make sure that we get things done and not just say the things that we think is politically correct, to say the things that we think can be done in theory, but not with that practical bent. So our practical ability to get things done, I think, plus the mission-mindedness, plus that attempt to always solve all the problems that are in our midst, I think are all the kind of work that allowed us to do the best that we can. And these are all very, very cultural in Singapore. I don't know how we can, share those things, but we speak with a lot of passion about what we are doing. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Sun Xi. I'm from China. From my personal experience, I know how important education is because I was born in a small village in China. Then it was education which gives me the chance to study in NUS. So, in my opinion, for most of the problems in the world, education is a solution. But for some problems in the world, education actually is a problem, especially about how we teach social science, especially about politics and history. You try to foster and deepen hatred, or you try to foster solidarity among friends from other countries. So my question is, in your opinion, how should we teach youth about history? Thank you.
Do any of you want to? How do we take this one? This is always such a prickly question, History is, I'm not sure, is ever completely objective, but would you like to?
I think I don't have an answer to this question, but I think what Her Excellency Madam Halima alluded to is just to be able to focus on the economic growth of society. That will give a little bit, of this hatred or differences or whatever aside. That's what my thought about it.
Quickly, I think education can be a problem, and not only because of history. If you teach, a person to become just a machine, then you will have a problem, whether this is really in history or not. When it comes to history, social sciences, and all those very important and crucial areas, I think this is where I spoke about. Yes, identity is important and culture, but I think the approach to those is a comparative education, which means bring into the classroom multiple views around, the topic. Allow your students to be exposed to multiple views around the same topic. And they have a debate, and that debate doesn't mean that it will lead to one is right and one is wrong, because they could all be wrong or all be right, depending on from the way they are looking at. I think the ability for tolerance and being able to listen to others and to accept the other views, that does not mean you are agreeing to it. I think this is what we lack, today, especially when it comes to those social sciences. We try to teach the students our version of the story. And this is the version of the story you need to learn. I think what we need to tell them, this is our version of the story. There is other versions for your mind to think about. And to be honest, this talent, it's going to be crucial for the future. Because with all this disinformation that we see, with all this information overflow, nobody can tell, in the previous, at least you can have some few facts, that there has been this number of people got killed. Now, whether being killed for right reason or wrong, this is a different debate. But at least you have the number. Today, I can tell you that there people can tell you about a disaster in a certain country with the number of deaths, nothing have happened. And there is no way you can verify or validate. So with this information, the possibility of problems in the area of history and social sciences will be magnified big time.
And also, I just to add to the point of tolerance for my colleague, Dr. Ahmed, is that really it combines also what Mr. Wong actually alluded to about implementation. United Arab Emirates, because of the nature of cosmopolitan society, we created the highest level of policy and the highest level as a minister of tolerance. And I think that changed lots of the mindsets in terms of the society to how to communicate with each other, how to adopt certain policies and different views. So I think that might be also one of the things that I just only comment on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a very, very quick addition. I mean, as an educator, professional education, I hope that education will provide as many solutions as we can to the world's problem. But we can't solve all problems. I think that's the point that we need to make. But I really, really hope that we are not the cause of problems. Yeah. And on the point about understanding history and understanding the world today, that's exactly what education must try to do in one of the toughest challenges that we are facing as a profession. How do you help our kids to really become a thinker? Because as Madam Halima has put it, it's not just being literate, it's about being educated. And education is really about developing the thinking person, and I'm going to use this word I think could be useful for us to debate this issue, who can develop discernment about the world, really thinking about what you're reading and discerning what is right and what is wrong, who is saying the right thing, who's saying the wrong thing. Because that one, with this world that we are facing today, is a real big challenge that all of us are confronting. And all that we can help our students with is developing that disposition, the skill set of discernment. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we've got a queue of people over here, actually. Why don't we take 2 questions so that the 2 young gentlemen can actually sit down? I'm sorry, Aisha, you all might have to stand for a little while more, but... So if you could introduce yourself and then ask your question, and if you're directing it at a particular panelist, please identify them.
Okay, I'm Marcus from NUS. I first actually visited the Gulf region more than 10 years ago to attend a conference called Education Without Borders in UAE, but it's no longer running. And Mr. Wong, my wife is a teacher, and she just wanted to say she's a huge fan of you. I just have to do this for her. So my question is, recently I watched a couple of documentaries by CNA, and actually it talks about the over-education of people today, in a sense where countries focus a lot on higher education, and they try to get their people attending universities. But what happened is that the economy are unable to absorb this newly educated workforce. And what happens is that people are highly educated, however, they are unable to secure good paying jobs or good jobs. I know this is outside the topic, but I'd just like to hear from you all if you all have any thoughts on how education and the economy can come together to address some of these problems of over-education. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd say that that's not out of the topic, actually, because this is precisely what all panelists were talking today about, which is the multiple pathways that as a policy, I think all our countries are actually trying to implement. So we'll come back to you, Marcus. If I could just take the next question.
Hi, my name is Tong Yi. I'm a soon-to-be graduate from NUS next month. So I thought I would come and support one of my university's flagship events just before I fly out to the world.
Thank you.
So my question is, most of my batchmates' university days were in the COVID era. So a lot of lessons were shifted to online and hybrid mode before face-to-face lessons were eventually reinstated. And also, some academic requirements were relaxed in light of lessening the pressures on us students and faculty. And I'm thankful for that as a NUS student. But I'm also would like to direct this question to any one of the panelists. So, in light of the impact of COVID-19 and the adjustment measures made, how can universities maintain their flexibility in research, teaching, engagement of students, while also safeguarding the mental health and also the academic competitiveness of the institutions? Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Shall we answer these two first, and then we can take the next two questions? Okay.
I can take the first one.
Okay.
If that's
About the one
about the overqualified and the economy. I think it's beyond the question related to education, if you would ask me. We as a human being created so we can complement each other. And the challenge always to find the right education and the right role to the different people within the society. Having said that, I think that take me into that respect that we spoke about. I think part of the challenge is not the education or overqualified or less qualified, how the society react into a lot of those activity. And unless you build respect around different profession, unless you build respect around different entity, you will always have that urge of the society wanted to all graduate from a university. And I think the challenge is always going to be that way. If you build within the economy and within the society, it's more than the economy, to be honest. When you speak about the teacher, the respect of the teacher is key. You go into another country where the teacher are not respected, you do not have anybody want to do that profession, even though the society need it. So what I'm trying to say is a solution to the issue of the over-education or the overload of university degree does not come by mean it is a university or an education challenge. It's a social challenge in a sense that when you start saying, carpenter is a respected profession and you need, for example, just to take a certificate for, and the society would respect and you will be well paid, you will find things normalized. The problem is we have respect to engineers, to physicians, to professors, to this and that. So everybody wants to be this. And this is, I think, what driving a lot of people toward university education. So I think it's a social issue rather than an educational issue. I might be wrong, but I think this is how I see it.
Okay. So with regard to the second question that was asked by our friend who has come to support this event, thank you. I'm not sure if any of you would like to answer it. I mean, you've talked about the problems that COVID brought, right? And how do the universities or any education system, and I think this was a problem, we would all, Singaporeans would have seen this first, and I'm sure you all saw this as well. The difficulties of trying to teach a Chinese class online to 30 hyperactive 8-year-old boys, it's my godson, and it was problematic, it was difficult. But, for those people who felt very isolated, and for many undergraduates, everything was done online, and the whole thing about university or any education that you have is always about the social context as well, right? How do the schools actually try to address this? I think if you don't mind, I'll just answer this based on what I saw, and maybe our panelists can also jump in. I think you'll see that most of the tertiary or the education institutes, and it wasn't just in Singapore, I think you would have seen this across the board, right? You still have to maintain that educational excellence. You still have that sort of competitiveness that you must maintain, those standards that you must maintain. But I think you even see this you see this across the board, all the schools, and I think MOE was very, very, very active about this, actually. They had very, very clear directions. And you saw this also in the tertiary institutes. It was very, very important that as soon as people could get together, even in small groups, this was strongly encouraged because that human interaction was important. Are there long-term problems with what came out of that whole COVID period? Yes. Okay, there is a real issue with, I think, the socialization across all ages. And there is a real problem in terms of some of the mental health issues and the ability to actually interact when you're not sitting in front of a computer screen. That, I think, is an ongoing problem. It is not just education, it's actually also social. I'm going to hand over to Dr. Mansur because I think he may have a more sort of...
Yes, thank you. Actually, what happened in COVID era, we were at the forefront in United Arab Emirates to be able to provide support for the teachers as well as faculties across the country and outside the country. We provided kind of a hands-on technical support for all teachers by providing 2 crash courses, how to become an online teacher in 24 hours and how to design a session in 24 hours. It's just only hands-on, nothing to... And some of the critique that we receive is, how come you're going to be able to build teachers in 24 hours? I think when somebody's drowning, you go first of all to save, not to teach her how to swim, right? So that was the response. I think also still the concept of socialization is still... I'm sorry, I am from those generations also, as the rest of the colleagues are. Still, we think that the socialization can happen only face-to-face. I am not in that particular belief. In 2009, I was supposed to deliver a talk to all school principals about future schools. And that particular morning, I sat down with my youngest son. At that time, he was in grade 9. And I asked him, his name is Rashid. I said, Rashid, what do you think about future schools? He said, Dad, I don't want to go to school. I said, okay, let me continue in the same thread of thinking. If you don't want to go to school, how are you going to learn? He said, simple. Bring me a robot in my room, and I'm going to learn through. I said, okay. Bring your son, you're going to isolate yourself from the people socializing. He said, okay, can I ask you that? I said, yes. He said that, how many people I'm interacting with? You're sending me from every day, from 7:30 in the morning until 3:30 in the afternoon, until I get home is at around 4 o'clock. How many people I'm interacting with? How many people socializing with? I said, okay, how many sections you have in grade 9 in your school? He said, 4. I said, okay, on average, 120, right? He said, Dad, say 300. I'm interacting with 300, even, different than the 4 sections that they have. He said, Dad, when I get back at 4:30, that I'm talking about 2009. He said that when I get back, I go through my Facebook and I interact with more than 2,500. Now you, Dad, tell me where I am socializing more. And that's exactly, I've changed my topic when I went to the lecturing, because we think that we are safeguarding the new generation, ladies and gentlemen. Our kids, the 2 years old, the same happens in Singapore, same in Qatar, same in UAE, everywhere in the world. The young generations, when they come to the universities, even to the schools, the teacher, the faculty, if we continue in the same way that we are in today, I think they will create for themselves another education system. So I think we're better off to go to the learners, to ask them also, because they are multi-talented, multi-mind, taking tasks in dimensions. We should a little bit relief on having the guardian of the next generation. That would be my comment. I think that this approach might irritate a lot of people around here, but I think this is my belief. I think the education Some of us are very optimistic about the technology. Some of ourselves are pessimistic. I think always we are in need of the two of them. The optimistic people, they created a airplane. And the pessimistic people, they created a parachute because they were so afraid that they might do something wrong goes with the airplane. So that is where we need the both of them in society, but we need to open up a communication and throwing questions for the next generation. Not easy. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let me take the last two questions.
Okay, my name is Rafi Al-Talai. I am from Oman/USA, where I live and work at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace in Washington. So, Mr. Wang, although I don't have a question for you, but I am a second fan after his wife today because I like passionate people, and I owe a lot of debt to my teachers for what I am today. Thank you very much. And I have actually two questions. One is for both Dr. Mansour and Dr. Ahmed, and another question for Dr. Ahmed only. So my first question is about the challenges. You didn't talk about the challenges that you are facing in regards of reaching your goals. You didn't talk about the people or the students or the learners. And also, since we know that Qatar and UAE both citizens are much less in number than non-citizens, is there any, can you compare between the behavior of the students or learners in citizens versus non-citizens, and do they have equal opportunities to pursue or continue their education in both foundations? Also males, females. So talking about males, females, my second question to Dr. Ahmed, you mentioned that it was remarkable that 50% of Qatar Foundation students or learners are females, and I don't like this phrase because as it is, it's not expected from women or female to be remarkable or to do what they are doing, right? We are not expecting women to be like 50% of the students in Qatar Foundation, wherever. And you know that in the Gulf, women for decades now, they are like 50% or more. Don't you find it remarkable, rather, that men or males, they have better opportunity, better job opportunities in the work, in the market, and better opportunities at the higher positions, and better opportunities in decision-making positions, despite the fact they are doing equal or less to female students?
I think there's one more question.
Hello, good morning. My name is Aisha Al-Sarihi. I am a research fellow at the Middle East Institute. I'm also from Oman. My question is about creativity and innovation, since our conference today in the role of education in the enabling the economic transformation in the Gulf. In the Gulf, we do have national strategies to enable innovation and creativity. But the creative people, they can find several pathways. One pathway, they recognize their potential, and then they push through the challenges in the environment and get through the system. Another pathway, that those creative people, they might not recognize their own potential, and then also the system doesn't recognize them, and then it stops there. Maybe they do something else. The third pathway, they might recognize their potential, but they might move somewhere else, maybe leave the country, where they can find the environment that nurture them. The fourth pathway is, of course, the how the national environments really enable them and support them in recognizing their potential, but also giving them a purpose for their creativity, wherever it takes them. So my question for the three panelists, where your respective countries stand in enabling the creative people in which pathway, and how to really enable the fourth pathway and avoid the first three pathways. If I may, I have a last question. When speak also about creativity and innovation, we mostly think about STEM, mathematics, science, like hard science, but also social science is there is a room for innovation and creativity there. We need it in the society to complement the STEM. In the Gulf, where do we stand today in also supporting the creativity and innovation in the social science? That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so the second question was for all three, but the first two questions were, the first question was actually for both of you, and then I think there was one specific question for you, Ahmed.
I think it was a statement.
Okay, so I'm going to actually hand over to the three of you and see how you would like to tackle the sort of the questions and comments that came out of the last two participants.
Let me start, if I may,
Sure.
quickly. To the question, I think for the opportunity for residents, male and female within Education City, it is the same. They have full access. As a matter of fact, they get support even from the foundation. Residents and even international students who get admitted to the university. So there is equal opportunity in that perspective. When it comes to after graduation and how country is dealing with those, there is a lot of program right now to try to retain those talent within the country, even the non-resident one, not even the residents. There is a lot of work that it's happening on residency and visas and all of that try to attract and keep talent to be really part of the economical development of the country. I'll go quickly to the statement. First of all, I think it's an equal statement because you also stated that male gets into position with less work and something like, so what you have accused me, you run into the same issue by accusing that the male get into. But anyhow, to your point. Yep. No, but I think, look, I think this is really a debatable element, to be honest, because we both need to provide data on that, not only on the end. You need to really see, for example, you cannot say this race is won by only male, while, for example, who's participating in the race is 90% is male. Or you cannot say, so you need data. But to your point, so I can clarify what I have said, so we do not really get into that debate. When I mentioned that elements related to was in a positive note, because what we have heard even from the US, if we are considering the West are more opportunistic to women, is that they have a challenge getting female into the engineering, for example, or the computer science, or the science aspect. And they keep telling us, okay, that the percentage within the university in those elements is more, there is more opportunity for the female. They constitute much larger percentage to their home campus in the US. And this is what I meant in a positive way, not to speak about it as if it is, nobody is expecting it. I think everybody wants this to be more and more. I think this is why we keep saying it, because we are happy that this would go beyond that. But I hope that, again, we look at the issue from the perspective rather than male and female and speak about how do we build the society into the future, because we need both. And it doesn't really make any good for a society where the women or the men are not educated. If the man is not educated, we will have a problem. If the woman is not educated, we will have a similar problem. I will stop there. I think this is really a very debatable topic. And I will just, maybe Dr. Mansour would say something related to the challenge. I can assure you, residents, non-residents, visitor, male, female, all have an equal opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ahmed. I'm going just to, sorry, I'm going just only to respond to the challenges I'm going to talk about is the challenges which we face today in education overall, but I'm talking about smart education in particular. Number one challenge is for the learners. The pillars of education actually is the four. I'm going to talk about the four challenges: the learner's perspective, faculty's perspective, the curricular perspective, as well as the learning environment. From the learner's challenges, the problem is the mindset into our geography over there, is that the learners are very acquainted with the push system into education. Unlike the smart education, and I have to differentiate between distance education and a smart education. It's totally different pedagogy. Distance education has been there for the last 400 years. The smart education is a change of pedagogy, not just only the technology itself. So when it comes to the learner, what we face at the university, people are used to having from the faculty a prepared, well-designed presentation or notes or something that they can absorb and then they can recall, as Mr. Wu has put it rightly. So changing the mindset of the learners, as we advanced from 2002 up to this moment, the less we have to concern about the learners now, because they are so much proactive and having advanced techniques and things, the knowledge itself, more than the faculty. Now, the second part challenge is the faculty. The faculty is a real problem we face, because they come from, even when we recruit people, they come from a traditional university. So in order to equip them, it's a contractual obligation in our university that they have to pass the e-faculty certification. So I think in 2007, when we started this certification, I launched it in front of the faculty and the deans. And one of the deans stood up by saying, Dr. Mansour, you are actually, some of our colleagues are saying as well, that you are insulting our intelligence, because they're going to go back to the benches. And I said, Alan, he was a French, I said, Alan, I think you travel a lot. If you were traveling and it came to your attention before boarding that the flight captain actually has not been into a simulation room for the last 6 months, would you go and fly with him? He said, absolutely not. I said, okay, so today you're not flying an aircraft, but you are actually leading the next generation. Sir, I am challenging your intelligence, not insulting your intelligence. So I think the faculty readiness is not to teach, but rather to mentor, to coach, to facilitate, is a hard. Okay. It's something hard to be able to achieve. And some of the things that Mr. Wu has alluded to about the development. And I think that the challenge is today with education, that most of our faculties are actually teachers, not facilitators, not coach. And I think even in the world of football that we are all, fan with, you will find if you don't have a good coach, no matter how many stars that you have in your team, they will never win any tournament. But the coach is important, the faculty is important. And the third thing is the curricula itself. The curricula is there, the knowledge is out there. So what the faculty needs to do is to coach people how to be able to get a structured knowledge throughout. The last one is the learning environment. The learning environment, people used to have a classroom, a school. We do not have. We're in the cyberspace. So learners, they have a flexibility to consume the knowledge at their own pace and at their comfort. We have graduates today from the university that they were captains in Emirates Airlines. They were attending the class over 40,000 feet up there. So the flexibility, getting the people to get through this learning. So these are the four fundamental, I think, challenges that we face. Regarding the males and females debate, I think there are still much needs to be done over there. But I'm going with an example for United Arab Emirates. Again, I go back to my colleague here, Mr. Wong, clearly put it into the implementation. The implementation is crucially important. That's why policymakers in our country, they force the parliament to be elected 50-50. 50 females, 50 males. It was by policy, not just only to talk about it. Today in the parliament, we have 50% females, 50% men, and there are half of the parliament overall being currently appointed and half of it being elected. So I think that is where Mr. Wu again, is the evolvement. The evolvement of the society is extremely important rather than dictating to be to revolutionary approach. So I think in that respect, and we created also kind of a higher council led by Sheikh Manal bint Muhammad about the gender balance. And I think that was a courageous step forward to have that one, and especially connected with the rest of the world. I come to the second question of innovation. I think...
Dr. Mansour, we don't have much time, so we've just a couple of minutes to wrap up.
Mr. Wu then.
Yeah.
Perhaps I'll just make some quick comments about creativity and innovation. The first point I'll make is that creativity and innovation, unfortunately, very, very hard to see and very hard to assess. So sometimes when you see, you don't even know that it's happening. The manifestation of creativity and innovation very often can happen in the product itself, when one sees the product. So, of course, when you see beautiful art piece, wonderful novel written, poetry, some music pieces, yeah, there's creativity with a big C. But actually what we are interested in for everybody's, for the imperative of the 21st century is actually a small c, creativity in our daily lives. Creativity that will help solve problems that we face on an everyday basis. So just in Singapore, just as an example, we are land scarce, we are water scarce, and we've got to solve our water problem. So some very, very creative engineers sitting somewhere in some public service agencies invented new water because they learned about membrane technology and applied it to what we can do in Singapore. And my point about creativity and innovation, therefore, is that necessity is the mother of invention in many ways. And how we can settle the challenges of innovation and creativity is actually to really imbibe in people that strong motivation, that back to the whole issue of passion about what they're going to do with their life, what they do with their skill set, the knowledge that they built up, to try and get them to want to impact the world and make a difference to the world. And once people have got passion and are rightly motivated to do the right things to solve world's problem, I think creativity will flourish. So back to Marcus's original question about overeducation, my strong belief is that there is no such thing as overeducation. We educate everybody to the fullest potential, imbue in everybody the passion to want to do their best and solve everybody's problem and be kind to everybody and be really a contributor to oneself, to the family, to the nation, to the world. I think we will have a lot less issue in the world and we will have a lot more peace, prosperity, and happiness. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to end now because we have actually completely run out of time. I've completely overrun and I'm in a lot of trouble. I'm going to hand over to Jean-Luc because he's going to let people know the logistics. If any of you've got questions, please feel free to approach the panelists if you would like. And I'm just going to hand over to Jean-Luc. But please join me in thanking our panelists. This has been a very lively session. Thank you.